Hello, BookTube. For the people who are new to this channel, I thought I would cover a subject that's probably familiar to a lot of you who have been here for a while. And that is the fact that in addition to being a sexy 28-year-old influencer on YouTube, I'm also a book reviewer and a book section editor. I work that latter capacity two different ways. I am the book section editor for a print newspaper in Georgia. Thanks to the wonders of modern technology, I don't have to go there to do that job. And I'm also one of the editors at Open Letters Review, an online literary journal that is free to read. I leave a link to it, I think, in every video. It's the successor to 10 years of fun that we had at Open Letters Monthly, and also another free online literary journal, where we run reviews of new releases. And maybe not so much. Let's leave Georgia off the table for a minute here and just talk about open letters. When it comes to open letters, I have said many times on this channel that I'm always looking for more writers. The writing is not paid, but open letters as a venue punches above its weight in terms of its influence, in terms of who reads it, in terms of how much the reviews are seen and talked about, in terms of whether or not the reviews are blurbed on paperback editions of books. That happens far in excess of what you'd expect from our size and our circulation via email. I think that mostly has to do with the strength of our masthead. We have a really, really strong masthead of people. It's not really ignorable. But it's also a question, it also has to do with the quality of the work that we publish. These are good, mainstream, solid reviews. A publicist, the publishing world, the book review aggregator sites, they're not going to be able to ignore these things. They don't read like blog entries. They read like professional reviews. That's what they are. And yesterday I was reminded of something in connection with open letters that I thought I'd make a video about, which is the fact that when you are an editor for a omnivorous journal like Open Letters Review, you need a lot of people. You don't want to end up doing all the work yourself. And that is even more of a stricture, that is even more binding when, I don't know, let's just say you were a freak enough to be able to do all the work yourself. You still don't want to. Even more so, you don't want to. If you're able to do it, you want even more so to find other people. Constantly be finding other people. I have suggested on this channel many times that if you are interested in trying your hand at reviewing books, you should definitely email me on the subject of writing reviews for open letters. You don't know what will happen. More than likely, you'll do it a couple of times, find it a little tedious, maybe a little unrewarding, and stop. But it could be that you fall in love with doing it. It could be that you love doing it. And that's nothing compared to the feeling you will have if you go into a bookstore, pick up a paperback of a new release from last year, and find your name printed on it. There's nothing compared to that. Open Letters doesn't pay its contributors, but there's no money that can equal that. As some of you will have known, and in 2025, more of you will know that. It never gets old. It's always thrilling. And because you need more hands, the more hands, the merrier, you really have to go beating the hustings for people. And it makes sense, realistically, that most of those people will not be jacks of all trades. I myself am a jack of all trades. I am an omnivorous reviewer. If you give me something, I can almost certainly write an entertaining review of it. I have my favorites. I have my specialties, dead Romans, dead Kennedys, and dogs, but I'll review anything. But I don't expect to find that. Most people don't have the time, the sheer amount of time in 24 hours on the clock to read the way I do. Most people don't have the breadth of experience. So, they might want to review a new book on the 30 Years' War, but they don't know anything about it. So just the background research would be prohibitive before they even get to reading the book. So it's fun. It makes sense practically, and it's also fun to put out the call for specialists, for people who already know a subject, who already know they love it. I've mentioned on this channel a few times that I have a poetry guy. I do. I have a poetry guy. And he does a great job. Those slim volumes of contemporary poetry where I read them on this channel, read about them on this channel, and I think, no one on earth could make anything out of this. I send a package to my poetry reviewer. He makes fine stuff out of it. Better reviews for the general press for those books than they're going to get literally anywhere else. Literally anywhere else. The New York Times, the Washington Post Book World, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, God help us, the London Review of Books, the New York Review of Books, the Times Literary Supplement in London, they're going to ignore those volumes. They're just going to ignore them. Those little volumes of contemporary poetry are not going to get reviewed outside of Poetry Magazine or other poetry journals. And it's manna from heaven for a publisher and also a poet to get a mainstream review. They love it. They hate the echo chamber as much as anybody does. Well, that's amazing. And we do that. I found a poetry guy, and I'm going to stick my hooks in him until he dies of old age. In fact, I will probably be the cause of his death. But that leaves plenty of other subjects. And the one that came to my mind yesterday is one that you would think I would have a line out the door of volunteers, and that is movies. Far, 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 far more people watch and love and have always watched and have always loved movies than I've ever read. Nobody reads. This little corner of BookTube, about 350 channels and their followers, including the people who don't have BookTube channels of their own. So you take Olive at A Book Olive, you take Katie at Books and Things, you take Ollie at Criminale, you take Sarah the Bookish Knitter, and Heather at Hannah at Hannah's Books, and in Roz at Scally Dandling About the Books, and her daughter, and you take this broad ecosystem. It's not very broad. It's about 350 channels. You take those channels and you take their wonderful followers, the people whose names we all know, whether we've met them or not. I make an attempt. I made an attempt in 2021, 2022, 23, and 24 to reach through the looking glass and actually pull those people into this room for wine and calzones. But this is the community that we have built here. Those people that make those videos and the people who watch those videos, I would argue, are probably the sum total of readers of English language books in the world. It's not much. It wouldn't fill a major sports stadium. But movies, including here, I'm talking about the broader umbrella here, so cable productions, multi-episode cable productions, and also the 2 and 3 hour things you go to see in the theater. Those, far more people watch those and always have and know them and love them. And yet, I don't have a movie guy. And by guy here, I mean anybody. I don't have a movie person, a movie reviewer. I'm often tempted to do it myself, and I'm often exhorted to do it myself. I have an old friend who's worked in Hollywood for a long time, and who sends me screeners for everything, just everything she can get her hands on. It's always been our way. She's just always sent me. I almost never write about movies, and when I do, it's usually resoundingly eviscerating them. But it doesn't matter. We talk about them, and that's fine. She has said for decades, I love the way you talk about movies. I love the way you write about them too, but I'll take you talking about them. I love it. There have been times, she has told me for decades, there have been times when you made some observation about a movie. You're going a mile a minute, I'm barely getting a word in edgewise, but you make some observation about a movie that sticks with me so much that I write it down and bring it up at the next production meeting. This is a really good point. We shouldn't lose sight of this thing. I don't know how much of that is true. It's always been flattering, and I love watching that stuff and sometimes obsessing about it and watching it hundreds of times. But she has often said, you should also review this stuff. And the reason that I don't is because I've known much better movie reviewers than myself. And also it feels a little bit afield. It feels like I would, I know how to review a book. Movies, I'm not so sure. Maybe I'll try a little bit more of it in the future. But I'd like to have a movie aficionado review for Open Letters. And maybe that movie aficionado is you. Again, it's not paid. You don't get paid per piece or per line. But you are appearing in a journal that gets read. The only other allowance in terms of practical compensation that I would offer for a movie person, I can get you the books, any books about movies, a new biography of a star, a new study of a theme in theater or whatnot. I can get you those books and send them to you. I send books in the mail all the time, so that's no big deal. The only other compensation that I would offer is that if you save your receipts, I would happily reimburse you every month for the movies that you go to see. But those practical details are the smallest thing. The main thing I wanted to do in this video was go over the basics of how you would do it if you wanted to try your hand at reviewing movies. And again, by movies, I mean any plastic production, so the movie in the theater or anything on cable, how you would go about doing that for Open Letters. Open Letters review is not academic. It is not literary criticism. It is what I often refer to as a newspaper review. The reviews are between 800 and 1,000 words, almost never longer than that. There's almost never a reason to be longer than that. Had an editor once tell me that. You can't make your points in 800 words. I'm not sure what you'll be able to do in 2,000. Once she made that point to me, suddenly I couldn't help see it everywhere I read anything. A newspaper review of anything entails a lot of other things other than just those kinds of practicalities. And I thought we'd go over those in terms of a do and don't list. And we'll start with the don'ts. And don't number one is don't be a snob. And this is far more important for movies than it is for books, not only because far more people watch visual representations than read, but also because snobbery is far more endemic to the film world than it is to the book world. I hate book snobs. I have combated them my whole professional life, but movie snobs are far more prevalent. They're everywhere. In terms of the practical implications of don't be a snob, you need to review what people see. You need to review what's out there. So if you want to be, if it crosses your mind that you might want to be Open Letters movie person, and all you're thinking about is the art house revival film that has 5 people in the audience and they all know each other and they're all wearing black turtlenecks, don't bother. Don't bother. You can't be a snob. There is no wrong way to enjoy watching movies. You've got to review what's out there, what people are seeing. And then thing number 2, don't number 2 is that you can't hate movies. And you might think, well, surely no one who reviews movies hates movies. You'd be amazed. I would say most people, especially in high profile venues, who review movies hate them. And don't believe that they do. Adamantly tell themselves that they love movies. Well, if the last good movie that ever appeared anywhere, in your opinion, was The Seventh Seal, Ingmar Bergman, 1957. If I ask you, what was the last great movie that appeared, and you say it's that, then you don't love movies. You love being 18. You love remembering when you were 18. And you, in fact, hate movies. And if you hate the thing you're reviewing, you're worthless as a critic. You can hate an individual thing, sure. A book can come across your plate and you finish it and say, I hated that, and because I write for Open Letters Review and my editors at Open Letters Review will let me eviscerate something if I hated it, provided I have my ducks in order and can make a case, then I'm going to do that. I'm going to eviscerate it. But it won't be every book. It'll just be this book that I hated. If you hate all examples of the thing you're claiming to be a critic of, then you're worthless as a critic. So believe it or not, after don't be a snob, the second don't on our list is don't hate movies. Or feel free to hate movies, but don't get in touch with me about maybe trying your hand at reviewing movies, because believe you me, if you think that the last movie that was worth the celluloid it was printed on was The Seventh Seal, it's going to show. I'm going to be able to notice it right away. I'm going to know right away. My main quarry in life has been book snobs, but I hate snobbery of all kinds. And I can spot it a mile away. It has a radioactive glow to it that illuminates the night for me. I can spot it a mile away. Some old friends of mine have said that I'm so paranoid about snobbery that I spot it when it's not there. I don't think that's true. I think I'm pretty accurate at knowing whether or not someone's a snob. And it will show when it comes to movie criticism, because you will hate movies. So that would be don't number 3. Or don't number 2. And don't number 3 is, we're going to go over it again here in the do's, and it's true not only with movie criticism, with any kind of criticism or any kind of writing or any kind of freelancing in any way. The third don't is don't fight with your editor. which again might seem very common, a very simple, obvious thing, but it happens a lot. Don't fight with your editor. That shouldn't need elaboration, but nevertheless, it can take many forms. Your fighting with your editor can take many forms. I'm not going to send you, if you want to try your hand at reviewing a new movie for Open Letters, you are welcome to do so. I welcome you to do that. I'm not going to send you a bullet-pointed list that's 3 pages long. I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm trusting that you will have the common sense to write for your venue, which is a natural thing for freelancers. You have to write for your venue. You can't expect your venue to change just because you want it to. If you have a thing you want to do and it doesn't happen in the venue you have in mind, submit to a different venue. Don't ask the venue you have in mind to change what they do. Open Letters does newspaper-style reviews. So if you send me a 2,000-word piece that's all theoretical and has nothing to do with the movie under review, except only barely tangentially, it's a waste of both our time. I'm not going to run it. And if you argue with me, I'm just not going to run anything by you. So number 3 is don't argue with your editor. I am, and believe it or not, in correspondence with freelance writers, I am a lamb. I am as gentle as a babe. If I don't like what you're doing, I will gently ease you out the door, but I will not browbeat you. I will not savage you. I will not be rude to you. I will not bully you. I will encourage you. I want you to do this. I want your voice to be out there in the world. It's much easier to want that with books because Open Letters has a reputation. With movies, including TV shows, we would have to be carving a bit of a reputation. We're known to book aggregator sites and to book publicists and to book editors. We're not so much known in movies, but if you started to do radioactively good work, we will be. But that's don't number 3, is don't argue with your editor. And that includes everything from the minor stuff. Every editor in the world is going to make what they call silent corrections on your prose. In other words, a silent correction is where the editor feels like he can do it just by himself. This line is awkward. I'm just going to take this one phrase out. I'm an adult. I can write, same as you can. I know the phrase is not important, and it's making the line read bad, and it's tiny. Or you didn't clarify who this person is in this line, and the last person who was named is not the pronoun here, not the antecedent. I'm just going to clean that up a little. I'm going to add a name to this line here. A writer can't possibly object to a silent edit. So anything from that all the way to your opening is terrible, could you please change it? I like the rest of it, but the opening is chatty and chummy and idiosyncratic and conversational in a way that we are not. Could you take a look at anything else that we write on this site and write along those lines in that you don't have to imitate, but along those registers, as opposed to the gonzo autobiography note that you struck here. Anywhere along those lines, from silent edits all the way to asking for an actual edit, in all of those cases, don't argue with your editor. Make your case, but that's it. Anyway, those are the don'ts. 3 don'ts. Don't be a snob. Don't hate movies. And don't argue with your editor. Now we can deal with do's. And number 1 do is cover the basics. And the surest way to spot a movie snob or a film student, oh God help us with film students, the surest way to spot them is that they will ignore the basics. But you can't ignore the basics in a newspaper review of anything. So the basics are, what is this? Explain it. Who directs it? Who writes it? Who stars in it? What did they star in before that you might know them from? Who does the photography and what's it like? Where is it in the zeitgeist? Is this a movie about political corruption and a season of political corruption? Is this a movie about an asteroid strike when an asteroid has been in the news, a pandemic or whatnot? The basics. What is this thing? I say this when I give you basics about reviewing books. I always start with this point as well for do's. Tell your reader what you're talking about. Don't assume that they know what you're talking about. Tell them what you're talking about. If you do too much of that, if you overdo the situating of the thing, I will catch it. Your editor will catch it. Your editor will let you know if you need to tone that down. Otherwise, do it. If you don't do it, your editor is going to ask you to do it. In this case, I am going to ask you to. I'm going to ask you. All right, this is fine as far as it goes, but could you add a paragraph at the beginning, telling me what you're talking about? I have no idea what you're talking. I know what you're talking about, but your reader isn't going to know what you're talking about. So could you add a paragraph at the beginning, telling me what you're talking about? Now, remember, don't number 3, right? Your response to that request from your editor is, sure thing, here it is. Not sure thing, I'll do it in a week. Not sure thing, I'll do it tomorrow. Sure thing, here it is. Are we clear on that? It's not your top 10 reasons why you shouldn't do that. It's here it is. Here's what you want. Or I withdraw the piece. One of those two things. But not the third way. Not arguing with your editor. So, then the second do here, the second thing you should do is write snappy. This is not, I mean, I say, when it comes to book reviews, I say always there's a difference between a book review and a book report. A book review is a kind of writing on its own. It's not a summary of somebody else's writing. It's a kind of writing on its own, which means it must have its own structure, its own pathos, and its own humor. It's a kind of writing on its own with your name on it. So you should treat it accordingly. Same thing is true with movie reviews. And when I say write snappy, I do not mean write patter. Movie reviews are so prone to patter. They're so prone to that kind of box office-y, jargony patter that means nothing, and you're not writing it, you're on autopilot, you're just siphoning it from other people, and it's largely insulting to your readers. There was actually, it's the movie criticism is so well known for this, that there was actually a skit about it on Saturday Night Live starring Ben Affleck. I'll see if I can find it on YouTube and link it below, where the hack movie reviewers in the skit are realizing they know perfectly well how horrible their jargon is, and they know they have to do it, so they're just groaning out these horrible double entendres. You don't want to do that. Just because a lot of the movie criticism that you've read has been like that doesn't mean it's right. It's wrong. You shouldn't sound like Pauline Kael, unless you are Pauline Kael. If you're Pauline Kael, I'll know it, and I'll give you all the leeway in the world. All the leeway in the world. Believe you me, despite what this list sounds like, there is no greater joy in the withered rhesus monkey heart of any editor than to find a writer for whom you will ignore the rules. There is no greater joy than that in the world. If you're Pauline Kael, most of you are probably too young to know who I'm talking about. You can Google Pauline Kael, K-A-E-L. If you're Pauline Kael, I'll know it. I won't know it from you telling me. I'll know it from what you write. And if that's true, Bob's your uncle. I'll give you all the leeway in the world. I might even give you more than 1,000 words. But you don't have to be Pauline Kael to be snappy, to be original. Your writing should stand up. It should be energetic. You want to keep in mind the main purport of any review, whether it's a book, an art show, a theater. God, what I wouldn't give. I had a theater critic for a bit. He disappeared. He was at UK theater anyway. An American theater critic? Ho ho. Ho ho ho. But movies, at least everybody has access to that. The main process there is not to do right by the production, although you have to do that as a critic. It's to be entertaining on your own. And then the third do on this list. So we've had 3 don'ts and now 3 do's. And the third do is also the third don't. I wanted to do the third don't just to hammer the point home, which is to be agreeable, which is the do version of the don't argue with your editor. Don't argue with your editor. Be agreeable. Be upbeat. Be amenable to what your editor wants, unless your editor is flat out unrealistic. Some editors, at least in the ye olden days, were monsters. The only reason you put up with their crap is because of the prestige of their venue. Most of them aren't like that anymore. And no venue is worth it. So don't put up with it. Don't put up anywhere, not just in freelance reviewing, but anywhere. Never put up anywhere with being treated like garbage. Never. Anywhere with being treated like garbage. Unless it's the law in the country where you live. But most editors aren't like that, and I'm certainly not like that. I'm a babe in arms to work with. But nevertheless, I'm a babe in arms to work with, but I have zero tolerance for Well, once upon a time, the word was uppity. I have zero tolerance for freelancers, and there's no way I'm going to be able to say this that doesn't make it sound horrible. Uppity sounds horrible, but also freelancers who know their place, that also sounds horrible. I won't use either of those constructions. I will only say be agreeable. A lot can happen if you're agreeable, not just in making this assignment easier, but in guaranteeing that you get other assignments. How many times in my professional career, either the first half a century ago, or the second half now, how many times have I realized or been told after the fact that a connection I made with a new editor was made by an old editor saying not that my work was good, but that I'm really fun to deal with. And that sealed the deal. And that will. We're all only human. So that makes perfect sense. So be agreeable, upbeat and agreeable. That is your third do. So cover the basics. Write a newspaper review, regardless of what it is. I mean, if I'm doing this whole video about movie reviewing, and your eyes only lit up when I mentioned theater reviews, well, okay, fine. I'm not going to do one of these for every single manifestation of the arts. Feel free to email me about reviewing plays in your locale, and don't worry if your locale is a small town in Louisiana. Live theater reviews have a venue, they have a life of their own. They do not have to be in New York City. Although, if you're a theater kid in New York City, and you even have a faint idea of writing theater reviews, feel free to get in touch with me, keeping in mind only one thing. The thing I said earlier about how I'm happy to cover your ticket cost? No. No. When your ticket is $750 each? No. I'm willing to do that. But if you do off-Broadway, if you go to off-Broadway shows in New York anyway, I would love your reviews of them. But I'm talking about movies here. I'm talking about the big thing, the Zeitgeist thing, the Barbenheimer thing, Wicked, Gladiator 2, all the stuff that's coming out, or that is out. If you want to review those things, if you want to try to do that, you could build a clip file. You could build a body of work at Open Letters doing that. So this is in the nature of a casting call for a movie reviewer. I would like a movie person. I have a poetry person, a couple of other persons, and I am a jack of all trades, so I can be the person that I need, but I'd like a movie person. Maybe you are that person. If you think you can live with these do's and don'ts, don't be a snob, don't hate movies, don't argue with your editor, write a snappy review, cover the basics, be agreeable to your editor. If you think you can do all those things, then by all means, let me know. Not only movies and cable stuff, but also books. There are books that come out, biographies of stars, meditations on themes and periods in cinematic history. I would love to send you those books, and I'd love to read the rest of your stuff. So anyway, that's just a call for the new year for a movie person. So I'll wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.